to just do a quick reminder on how I wash colors. Even though there's an entire little mini tutorial about washing colors, I'm going to show everybody that hasn't seen that. I like to use spoons because I can move them around on my workspace, move each color closer to the piece I'm working on. I'm not fond of trying to work from a larger container. I like having the depth of the spoon be what I'm dragging my enamel out of it, and mostly it's just because it's the way that I'm used to working. So, but it has served me very well for half a century. So this is distilled water. I've already washed a few colors in here, so there's a little bit of cloudiness, but there's no enamel floating in this water. So I dip my spoon underneath the water, and then I use a stir rod and agitate it, and then rinse off the cloudiness that I agitate to the top. And I'm going to repeat that until I'm not seeing a lot of cloudiness come up. So most of what that cloudiness is particles of enamel that are smaller grain size than 325 mesh. And I like having the 300 mesh and the 250 mesh and the 200 mesh and the 150 mesh and all of those together with my larger grain particles, because I think I'm able to shade with it better, and I don't sift out those particles prior to washing. So you can see that the last time that I poured this water off, that there wasn't a little pool of lighter color in the middle, so there's not like a residue of that lighter color, which would be the smaller grains. So in the old days, the way that they ground these enamels was that they used porcelain ball mills to grind the glass, and the residue that we were washing out at that time was little particles of porcelain that would cause cloudiness in your enamels if you left them in. Sometimes back in those days I found fly legs and little pieces of cardboard and little dust bunnies and all kinds of weird stuff in the enamel that was fresh, that I had just been manufactured. But the Japanese enamels are ground by crushing them between two steel plates, and so they don't have any porcelain residue in them. They're very clean, and they don't take a lot to get them washed and prepared to use. So I only wash what I'm going to use in that sitting. So this is actually what I've washed here in these two colors is a large amount of enamel, because I'm doing a large test plate. But a lot of times I'll wash like a quarter of this amount of enamel, and that's the amount that I'm going to use on the piece that I'm working on, because when I'm done, I don't save that washed enamel, I throw it away. Sometimes I'll put it in my counter enamel, but these two colors I would not put in my counter enamel because they're silver sensitive. So, and it could be a poor choice for counter enamel. So, okay, so I'll be right back. I'm going to go get my piece, and we're going to get some of these beautiful purples onto the piece. See you in a minute. All right, so I got this fired, and I have my G701, my, let's see, this S6AA, the S172B, the G110 Flux, and Bear. on there. So now we can go ahead and put these sensitive purples on here. And the majority of what I'm going to be doing is the H-28A because it's such a spectacular color, and I really, really want to get a good idea of how this color is going to act. So the main difference between this first row of cells and the second row of cells is that the first row is got silver wires and the second row has gold wires. So you'll be able to see the difference in how this color looks when it's been fired next to those wires. Okay, then I'm going to test the H-28B in this area. I've got a very thin layer of G110 that was the base coat, and then I added more G110 here, and the bottom half of this one is the S172B, the top half of it is the S6AA, and the very top of the blank is the G701. These are all favorite colors of mine to base coat pinks, reds, and purples. Okay, now we're going to dry it and fire it. Two minutes at 1400 degrees. I'll see you back here in just a minute. Okay, so this is really cool because this did exactly what I was expecting it to do and what I was hoping it was going to do so that I could drive a point home to you guys. So you'll recall that in these two cells, we had the original G110 base coat. That's the layer of flux that we fired the wires into. And on the bottom half of this cell, we had just that one layer of G110. And then the next cells had a second layer of G110 on top of that base coat before we added the purples on, and then the three different pinks and lavenders that we use below here. So you can see that the area where there was just the one layer of G110 on there there's a huge reaction to the silver because there was not a thick enough layer of enamel separating the silver from this silver sensitive color. This H-28A is incredibly sensitive, and so what I've found happening with this color is that people would go to use this and either they didn't know about that extra layer of buffer that I'm always talking about, or they thought that the one layer of flux that was on their base was going to be heavy enough. But the truth is that if that base is thin, then the molecules of the sensitive glass will, while the piece is hot in the kiln, will interact with the silver, and you'll get this muddiness. So this is a super graphic example of why you need an extra layer of some buffer. Okay, so I'm also looking at other areas here, and I'm seeing a little bit of reactivity here, and a little bit of reactivity here, and a little bit of reactivity here. So my guess is that the extra layer of buffer was not quite enough. This is a super, super sensitive color. Now, in the H-28B, you do get a little bit of reaction where it's directly over your one layer of G110 base coat, but it's not as bad. And the rest of the areas, I don't see any negative reaction in the rest of the areas. So the H-28A is definitely the more reactive of these two enamels. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and put another layer of these colors on here. We're going to go ahead and keep working in the areas that have this negative reaction just to see what we're going to get. All right. We're going to fire this. Actually, on the last one, I bumped up the firing time to 2 minutes and 20 seconds because this is a fairly big piece, and I did want it to fire to maturity. So I'm going to do the same thing on this layer. I'm going to fire it at 1400 degrees for 2 minutes and 20 seconds.